basically started on a trip to Scarborough with me and Pauline, better say Pauline and myself, if you want to edit that, John, and the grandkids, and we were walking along the harbour, having done the normal things for Scarborough, the miniature train, the open top bus round, and then arriving at the harbour, it was very sad to see a boat that I've known all my life from Grandad's days when he used to take me up on the train from Billingham to Scarborough, and he always used to say that Coronia and the Regal Lady were the Dunkirk little ships that helped to save our army. And in them days it was a bit of a far off dream, you know, like couldn't quite understand what he meant, but as the years went by it soon sort of sunk in. Became involved in the marine industry most of my life, and it was on a very rare occasion that I seen Coronia over the years and got to know Tom Marchant from Scarborough Steamers, and the day in question I said to Tom, what's happening with Coronia? You can't let that little ship die like that. And he said, it's not mine, Grave, it belongs to Robert Goodwill, the MP for Whitby and Scarborough. Robert paid a bill to Richard Dunstan's yard, which was well over £100,000 for bottom repairs to the ship. And Tom unfortunately couldn't pay the bill, and it left Robert Goodwill the owner of the boat, who Peppercorn rented it back to Tom. That was in 2005, and she steamed on until 2010. And then the EEC made a ruling to stop Class 5 passenger vessels going more than 10 miles from the home port, which very sadly was the end of Coronia's days as the excursion vessel that used to steam to Whitby, and she always went to Bridlington as well, the Yorkshire Belford Bridge to Scarborough. All that trade virtually stopped overnight. It left Tom with two boats carrying 150 passengers on hour-and-a-half steams round Scarborough Bay, and Tom was the first to tell you we had to layer up because commercially it just wasn't viable. I sometimes sailed with 15 people on these days. The footfall in passengers in Scarborough was falling away to nothing for the bigger boats. So we sort of like had a cruise on the Regal Lady that day, and then I said to Tom, look, is this Robert Goodwill chap approachable? Because myself, I'm not really MP material. But he was approachable. We sent him a letter, I think we sent him a CV at the time, and said, look, you know, we'd like to put a plan together to try and save that little Dunkirk ship. And over the years I'd come across Coronia. I came across her in Gibraltar as well in the 90s, which sort of made me wonder why she was out there, you know, having been a Scarborough boat for all them years. And the next story, we went over with Peter Naylor and Eric Reeves, good friends of mine, Joe Power, sadly passed now, and we had a close look at her, and we decided if we could put her on the drying grid just to confirm the bottom plates were alright, and we might have a chance of restoring her. I mean, we had a lot of the skills, we didn't really have the finance, I must admit, which is another story, but amazingly, through volunteers and some donations, we've managed to get us to where we are today. The Dunkirk little ship, Watchful now as she's named, we put her back to a wartime name, and she sails again with the Association of Dunkirk little ships. There's still 55 of them left in sea going, and this is one of them. We left Scarborough on the 31st of August 2017, 7 o'clock in the morning, nice calm morning, and quite a few people turned out to see her go, because she'd been in Scarborough for basically 53 years with a short spell in Gibraltar. And it was very sad in a way, because a lot of people recognise Coronia as Scarborough. People have come aboard, met, you know, husband and wives have met on this ship, and it's gone on from there. She was a bit of a family tradition over the years. Whenever you went to Scarborough for your holidays, you had a trip on the steamer, the Regal Lady or Coronia. But you know, we had a plan, and we put that plan into action. Robert Goodwill thankfully accepted the offer, and that meant, you know, game on now. Yeah, we had a fairly uneventful trip from Scarborough down to Hartlepool. We lost the lift pump on one engine, which is what lifts the fuel up to the fuel pump. Obviously with Eric and Pete and myself, we jury-rigged 5 gallon of diesel above the Gardner engine, kept topped it up with a watering can and just fed it directly to the fuel pump. And Caronia she came back up to 9.5 knots, and she steamed that all the way back to Hartlepool. We had Ajax with us, which was another boat I've owned for a lot of years. She was our support boat, come safety boat. We don't take any risks, you know, as far as it goes, but I mean, I know it's a risky game in the marine industry. It's, so you're always worried about stress of weather, you know, things happen that you can't foresee or plan for, but if you can sort of cover your back door a little bit, you can usually get these things done. We arrived in Hartlepool about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the marine manager Alan Henderson and Sean came down to meet us on the pontoon, and the first words were, "Graham, you said you were bringing a Dunkirk ship into Hartlepool, but you didn't tell us it looked as if it just come from Dunkirk." But she was really tired and worn. She'd suffered a lot during the 6 years low on the top of Scarborough Harbour. Scarborough Harbour has a bit of a characteristic. If you get a northerly or easterly wind, you get a metre swell runs round the harbour, so they tend to be riving and tearing all the time, and with the ropes and scrubbing themselves on the piles on the side of the harbour. And that was very sadly one of the problems with Caronia. We realised that the rubbing strakes were all worn away, the wood had gone, the steel had virtually gone, and she was just about down to the rivet heads. And once you start scuffing the rivet heads off, vessels of this age, she starts springing plates, and you have a major problem on your hands. You know, the vessel would have had to be scrapped in Scarborough if we hadn't done what we did. So we arrived in Hartlepool, and 10 days later we went across to Inspect Slipway, where we started the work initially on the hull, tidy the hull up and get the bottom of the boat you know, protected with anodes and various other items of the marine game. And then we came back to Hartlepool, and thank you to Hartlepool Marina for their efforts to give us a pontoon berth alongside, which not many marinas in this country would allow us to do what we've done to this ship, because it was literally major ship repair work. The old funnel had to come down, the old wheelhouse had to come off. The funnel was actually loose, it was wobbling about on the deck. We thought we might have lost that on the way from Scarborough, but we didn't, you know. Bit of jury rigging with a few ropes. The wheelhouse was held up with a couple of acros, because the roof of the wheelhouse was so thin. And yeah, so we started the work with a vengeance. The funnel went. Purdy and Welding and Fabrication round in Brenda Road designed a new funnel, thanks to Trevor. I did do a drawing on the back of a matchbox, as I always did over the last 40 odd years. And Trevor would put a steel drawing together, and we managed to achieve a new funnel with the right dimensions and shapes, slightly less in height than the old one. But the old one was initially built for a steam engine. Back in 1935, when Watchful was built, Caronia Watchful was built, she was going to have one boiler and 2 steam engines off it. But one of the Longfield brothers, who had a build, was a bit of a forward thinker his day apparently, and he opted to have that new German idea of diesel fitted to the vessel. And she had the very first Crossley diesel engines for a ship of this size fitted in the UK. And them engines actually seen her right through the war years and right till 1963, and they were taken out in Eyemouth in Scotland, and the twin Gardeners were put in. And the Gardeners are still in there today. We've done top end overhauls on them, and the cranks are fine, and they push the boat on nicely at 10.5 knots at just on 1,000 RPM. We have to put a generator in, obviously, because we have no power on the berth we're on, and that's the noise you can probably hear in the background. The generator has had to run every hour of the work that we've done on the vessel, and it supports the tea room now as well, and all the other electrical facilities. That was actually a donation by a chap called Mike Landers from Middlesbrough. Mike said if you need a new generator, he was in a position, he said, I'd like to actually support the vessel for you a little bit, and he did. He actually paid the cost of the generator, which was very good of Mike. Mike comes down on Remembrance Sunday and says a few words. We have a little service on board on Remembrance Sunday. Yeah, this is some of the work that's actually gone on the vessel. As I say, we replaced the funnel, the wheelhouse. All the steelwork inside and outside the vessel has been treated and repaired where need be. around the edge of the tea room. All the windows and everything had to be taken out and the steelwork replaced because it was beyond repair. Right, the pitch pine was taken off, and we took that to Peter Naylor's house during the COVID crisis, because Peter had to purchase shelter from COVID because of his breathing problem, and he cleaned all the boards up, and they were as good as the day they'd been put on in 1935 when she was built. The pitch pine has now formed the shelf that runs all the way around the tea room. The bakelite, we even saved everything we could, including the bakelite switches, which we refurbished and put back on the ship. As much as we could, we saved. Sadly, some of the old steelwork had to go that was beyond repair. Yeah, and the vessel now, as I say, sails again, and she'll go to sea again this year as she did last. And no doubt John will come along, take a few pictures. We've been able to achieve the work we've done on board with a team of volunteers, and I must thank every one of them personally, and every year I try to take them out for a couple of pints, and we do have a good social side, as in like the conversations we have, and a lot of the lads came along at a time of life when they were looking for something to do, and Dave the joiner, Phil, Andy, Barry, Pete, Eric and a few others have come and gone as well as we progress. We very sadly missed Joe, our rigger, Joe Power, passed away last year. But yeah, it's only because of the people involved we've managed to achieve what we've done. The other side of the vessel runs as a tea room, which is Pauline's department, and that runs with Kath, Nettie, Pam, Chris and Margaret, and they all do a grand job down there. It's all not for profit, it just goes into keeping the ship up and running and basically paid for in Hartlepool. It's not cheap to be where we are. We do pay a big lump to the marina for being on the berth, but as again, we've got to thank them for allowing us to do a project like this. The Gardner engines, we've had top end rebuilds on both engines. The vessel is still worked from the engine room. We have an engineer in the engine room, and it's worked via a telegraph, which is this. And the telegraph, you ring down for what you want on the engines, half full, slow head, stern. Obviously there's two of them because there's two engines down there. We have another system we fitted as well, which is a lighting system, which just makes life a little bit easy for the engineer, because he sometimes can miss the bells. The bells ring when the telegraph is put ahead and at stern. But odd times, with the noise of the generator and other machinery, it's very easy to miss that. For the first time in the ship's life, she's got hydraulic steering. We, thanks to a couple of people, John Wilson and various others, we managed to get a hydraulic steering unit from the old pilot vessel, the White Force that worked on the T's. And she has hand hydraulic now, and she also has electric hydraulic steering, which is a good help when you come to manoeuvring a boat at this weight. We've had to fit radar, chart plotter, we have an autopilot as well. Everything to make the vessel a little bit more seaworthy and sea-kindly to what she's had in the past. And when I brought the boat from Scarborough to Hartlepool, between Eric and myself, the boat had rod and chain steering, and I must admit, by the time we got here, after 7.5 hours, I could undo my shoelaces without bending down. I mean, it was known as Armstrong steering in the business, but it really was heavy, and we've been laid up for that period of time. Obviously we couldn't get grease to all the parts that we needed to, and as I say, we got here, and that's the main thing. Yeah, she's had several trips out since then. This is another method of communicating with the engine room. We have engine room call, and it's a lighting display which gives you in the engine room what I'm asking for up here. If I want to go ahead on the starboard engine, cancel the neutral, starboard engine, the engineer will engage the starboard engine. If I want to go ahead port, vice versa, he'll engage the port engine. And this works obviously in reverse if you want to go astern as well, And then when you want to come to neutral, you go back to your neutral lights, no coloured lights on, so the engineer engages neutral on the gearboxes. The gearboxes are a Gardner gearbox, they're a U2C type of gearbox, which is like working in a signal box to put them in and out of gear. By the time we manoeuvre out of Hartlepool, the engineer's had a real good workout. He doesn't need to go to the gym that day. Yeah. So that's where we are with the things. That's the rudder indicator in the middle of the vessel there. And these are the revs, engine revs for the gardeners. The generator runs independently, and we have a 24 volt backup system that automatically comes on should the generator fail. We don't lose any navigation equipment or radios. Yep. That's about it.
Some chocolate.